All right, then. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. on October 20th, 2020. And I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Bentley, would you please call the roll?
I will. Chairman Hardy.
Here.
Mr. Tuckfield.
Here.
Mr. Provenzano. Member Pro. Sorry. Oh, okay. That was a here. All right. Mr. Shudo.
Here.
Mr. Oliver.
Here.
And Mr. Bentley here. All present.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bentley. The next item on our list is approval of the minutes. They were sent to us, I believe, this morning at 7:41 a.m. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look them over. If there's no comments, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. We approve the September 15th, 2020 meeting minutes as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I'll support it, but I did have some discussion on it, just so you know.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Nope, it's all good. All good, Jasper.
go ahead, Aaron. Let's go ahead and do with the discussion.
Yeah, there was one thing that I just like clarification on, and I have not had a chance to go back and listen to the audio of this. I have to flip back to this. This would be with regards to item A, the Elite Corporate Park. I had asked Mr. Assorti a question about whether or not we are going to create a problem with the with causing a non-conforming lot. The way it's worded in the minutes, which would be page 4 of 7, it seems to indicate Mr. Assorti said there would be a problem, that we would be causing a problem, which my memory is that was not how it worked out. So I assume either my question is not worded correctly or the answer is not worded correctly. I just want that to reflect, assuming that's the case, that Mr. Assorti was not saying we were creating a problem in a non-conforming lot.
Okay,
And Tom, you may be able to remember that better than I. I'm pretty sure when we talked about that, you said that we weren't creating something that was non-conforming, if you recall that issue.
Mr. Assorti, are you here?
Yes, I'd have to go back and look at that. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. I guess if we could just have, if we can have the staff check that. I just want to make sure that we're not reflecting that we created non-conforming use.
Yeah, Mr. Tuckfield, I will go back and listen to that and make sure it's updated accordingly. I was not in attendance at that meeting, so I'll have to listen to it myself.
And Mr. Box, this would be with the standard proviso that I may be remembering incorrectly as well, and I'm certainly not indicating we should modify it. If what happened is what's recorded, I'm good with that. It's just that my memory is that's not how it went down. So
Okay, understood.
And that was the only concern I had. Mr. Shute, I'm certainly willing to support it, assuming that Mr. Box can look at that and revise it as necessary if you're good with that modification.
Yes, if we want to add that to that, that's fine. So do you want to wait until till the next meeting to approve these meeting minutes, or we want to go ahead and approve them? I have no problem waiting till we can find out if there was any talk about non-conforming, or we can approve them today. It's up to you guys.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Do you want to rescind that?
I don't want to rescind. I think we should just go ahead with approving the meeting minutes, and if we have to adjust them, we can do so. But I think the way I read them, the meeting minutes were correct. So if someone has a question, if they don't agree with it, I guess they can vote otherwise.
Is it, if I can ask a question, is it possible if we review the audio and the record is incorrect, is it possible for us to go back and amend these at the next meeting?
Well, I can make the motion that we don't approve the meeting minutes until the next meeting. How's that?
My only concern is, and again, maybe I'm incorrect here. I think we have to approve them within a certain time period. If we can postpone them to the next meeting, if that's kosher, I would appreciate it, just because I want to make sure that's reflected correctly.
Okay, I'll amend my motion that we don't approve the meeting minutes of September 15th, 2020 at this meeting. We wait until the following meeting to make sure everything's correct.
I appreciate it, Mr. Shudo, and I'll support that.
Okay, motion on the floor to wait on the minutes for September 15th until the next meeting so we can check Mr. Tuckfield's concerns. And that was made by Mr. Shudo and supported by Mr. Tuckfield. Mr. Bentley, call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. All ayes.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley. Next item on our list is new business and public hearing. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I guess
Chairman,
I'll make the motion. If there's no additions, deletions, or correction, I make a motion, we accept the agenda as read.
Support by Tuckfield.
Okay, motion to approve the agenda by Mr. Shudo, supported by Mr. Tuckfield. Mr. Bentley, call the roll.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Hardy,
Yes. Okay. All right, moving along, we have extension of time for preliminary plan Rockwood Park Site Condominium. Permanent parcel 0828376-023, located on the north side of 21 Mile Road, a quarter mile east of Romeo Plank, section 28. And I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Moreau Engineering petitioner. Turn this over to Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rockwood Park Site Condo was originally brought to the township in August of 2018 after a few rounds of revisions, including a decision by Macomb County Department of Roads to not allow an entrance on 21 Mile. The plans were revised, recommended for approval by the Planning Commission in February of 2019 and approved by the Board of Trustees on March 13th of 2019. Development, which is a single-family residential development with 21 units, will connect to the neighboring development of Rockwood, which includes 2 phases, all residential. As of March 13th of 2020, the preliminary plan approval has expired. On September 10th of this year, they submitted a letter to the township seeking an extension of time for this site plan.
Okay, is the petitioner in the audience?
Yes.
Okay, do you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
Just due to constraints with the DEQ and COVID-19, a lot of delays. We're submitting engineering drawings to the Public Works Department. They were looking for the preliminary approval, which had expired, so we're requesting an extension so we can move forward with the engineering.
Okay. I'll open it up to commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, to the commissioner, or to the petitioner, when would you get started on this project and why do you need another delay? Is it just because of the paperwork right now or the COVID, or what's the reason for the delay?
Well, we were working out the engineering with the DEQ. There was some wetland impacts. We had to purchase some credits from a wetland bank. There was the floodplain that was in the area. We're providing a cut and fill, so we're doing a lot of that review. A lot of it got postponed throughout the 2020 pandemic. So that got delayed, and now we have our draft permit through the DEQ. We're in the process of purchasing the credits for their permit. We went to the Public Works Department to submit the engineering drawings. And it's just a matter of they need the preliminary approval extension to submit the drawings and keep the project going for engineering review, so we can begin construction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Oliver has a question to the petitioner. Mr. Hardy?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I have my mic on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, my question is to the petitioner, why'd you wait 6 months to bring this back? You let it lapse for 6 months. When you got your first approval, did you realize it was for 1 year? These are always for 1 year.
Yeah, that's right. And we were getting ready to submit the engineering drawings, and coinciding with the DEQ, we were working with the DEQ to get their permit. It just takes time. A lot of these things take a lot longer than expected with, when it pertains to the DEQ. So with the COVID and no times for review and submitting, and all the agencies shut down, just time lapse. But we're ready to continue on. Submit the engineering drawings of Public Works. We have our DEQ permit in hand. We're ready to move forward. So,
but my question still to you is, why'd you let this thing lapse for 6 months? Because we were only closed. The township really was only closed for probably a month and a half, and you never contacted the township.
We were closed. I mean, everybody was closed down. I mean, that was a big time lapse there.
Okay, you didn't hear what I said. You might have been closed, but we were open where you could have contacted the township and asked for extension even 4 months ago. Now you come to us 6 months later and you're asking for an extension.
I mean, yeah, it was a little bit of a mishap on our part, but again, we've been working with the DEQ, and it just took a little bit longer than we expected. And yes, it was a mislap on our part, but we do apologize. But with the pandemic, and it was basically a year of us working with the DEQ. That's what the delay was too.
So I got a question for legal. Legal there?
Mr. Sorty?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, my question is, if this gets approved, we would technically have to approve it when it expired. That's back in March. Am I right or wrong?
Are you asking me if it needs to be retroactive?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't see any reviews on the other end that would suggest it was or wasn't. But yes, it would have to be retroactive to the time, which I think you could do given the current state of affairs in the state of Michigan.
Might I question, Mr. Chair, to legal? Mr. Provenzano here.
Mr. Provenzano, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, so I guess what I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Oliver, is procedurally this a valid request? I mean, because it did expire. Is there a requirement that when the extension of time is requested, that procedurally you do it before the 1 year's up? Is there something written that's what the, I don't want to say law, policy, or whatever it is I'm looking for here, that you can do that after it's already lapsed? Aren't you supposed to do it before?
You are supposed to do it before. We can just check with Josh, but I think we've done them, you know, shortly thereafter, but
This is 6 months.
yeah, I understand. I was surprised that it was placed on the agenda.
Yeah, I would, this is Mr. Box, I would concur with Mr. Assorti in that typically an extension is, someone would seek an extension prior to expiration, not after expiration. We have in the past approved extensions after the expiration. I believe we did one earlier this summer, shortly after the township offices opened back up. Somebody who had expired during the time period when we were closed was seeking an extension, and that was approved. So roughly, 3 to 4 weeks after they expired, we did approve an extension.
Can I ask the situation in which that was approved? I mean, he's claiming that he has an issue with the COVID pandemic and business closures and such, but it seemed that he was working, he said, I believe, with one of the departments. So that one wasn't closed and we weren't closed. What were the circumstances of the one that they allowed it to be extended past the time? What was the criteria there?
My understanding was that their period expired and their opportunity to renew was during the period when we were closed and not available.
That's
And
correct.
Josh, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the case on that one.
Yep, that's correct. That they expired during the about a month and a half when township offices were closed, and therefore could not seek an extension during the time leading up to when they were going to expire. So they reached out after our township offices were once again opened.
So then there is precedent.
Oh, Mr. Box, when did the petitioner reach out to you? I mean, we were only closed a month and a half.
Correct.
So,
We,
I mean, I can understand the 3-4 weeks for the other one because of the pandemic. I get that. I could even understand a month and a half because we were closed. But this is now 6 months.
yeah, this letter was turned in and dated September 10th. Mr. Kokomo did come into our offices about a week prior to that to talk about this situation. So I would say, a week before the 10th roughly is when we were first approached, and then the letter was officially submitted on the 10th of September.
I guess my concern is that if we're going to do this, are we setting some kind of precedent that these things are 1 year, or maybe they're not anymore? They're going to be whenever they get to it. And now 6 months, if we would have approved it, it would have been March 13th. 6 months has already gone by. If we approve this for another year, it's actually 18 months. I just don't want to get, stuck later on that, we did this and you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that pretty clear. Planning commission decisions don't necessarily set precedent for future cases, but I think and maybe I didn't make myself clear the last time. This is to make it retroactive. I think the planning commission could do it under the current conditions in the state of Michigan, but you would need a finding from the information presented that there were, that we were closed, there was insufficient amount of time to be able to do it, those types of things, to at least cover yourself so that if it is raised in the future, that there's a response and a documented reason for granting it. But I don't think as a general course, these are the types of things that should be granted in this kind of time period, according to the planning statute.
Yeah, because I'm not hearing on the record here that there was a reason, especially when he says that the petitioner says that he was with, I forgot who he said, what department he was speaking with, and for a year. I mean, so nobody was closed at that point in time. I mean, I don't know if we do choose to do that, can you make it 6 months? Because he's already wasted 6 months of it, or, I mean, I don't know. I just don't want to, I don't want to go past, you know, a year. That's like a year and a half is what we're actually doing. If we extend it for another year, right? That's what we'd be doing, right, folks?
Well,
Another year?
if you did it retroactively, the year would start to run from the retroactive date that you issued it from.
Yeah, I think that's correct. If you approve this for the 1 year retroactively, it would officially have started back on March 13th. Therefore, what you would be approving would expire again on March 13th of next year. So essentially a 1 year approval, of which 6 months have already gone by.
Well, then,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I can go, ask the petitioner,
Absolutely,
question?
sir.
is a 6 months extension going to work? Or are you going to be in 6 months saying that you didn't have enough time again? I mean, in 6 months, are you going to be ready to go?
A 6 month extension for,
So, yeah, we're going in for engineering review at the Public Works Department. I mean, typically on a development like this, you know, the first, after submission of the first review, in my experience, I mean, there's been, you know, you usually go through several reviews with engineering, and usually a typical review takes a couple months. So, you know, as far as even a 12-month standpoint, you know, especially with a project like this, when you're involving, you know, environmental issues, you know, plus, yeah, a lot of closures, you know, a lot of offices were closed. You know, I don't foresee how you guys expect to get, you know, final engineering drawings and, you know, getting ready for construction done within 12 months.
so what we're saying is, yes, we will be actively moving forward with the development. But as far as approval, that's basically on however long it takes with Macomb Township. And if that scenario happens, we can ask for another extension. But I mean, it's on, it depends on the people reviewing the site and how many times got to go back and forth.
This is Mr. Box again. I just want to clarify, the petitioner has mentioned a couple times that they're working with the Public Works Department. We do not have a Public Works Department. I assume you're talking about the Engineering Department, Mr. Van Tifflin. Is that who you're working with?
DPW, yeah.
DPW, I'm
DPW.
sorry.
Yeah, well, the submission for the engineering drawings or construction documents, yeah, it goes through your DPW.
Again, we don't have a Department of Public Works. We have a building department or an engineering department.
Yes, your engineering department.
Engineering.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner
Tuckfield.
Tuckfield. First off, I just mentioned someone mentioned to me that I'm having bad audio. So first thing I'll just be checking. Can you guys hear me okay? Is it coming through clearly?
It's
Kind
not,
of tough,
it's not
Eric.
it's not the best, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to try this again, and in the next pause, I'll try to do something else. My question, first off, would be to Mr. Box. Mr. Box, if we were to deny this tonight, can you take us through what the next steps for this petitioner would be? Would they be resubmitting? What would be their next steps?
If this extension was denied, their next steps would be to resubmit the site plan that was previously approved. They would start that process over again.
Okay, second question. If they were to start that process over again, do you anticipate anything different in that review process changing, or would you expect it to go through the same as it already had?
I would assume that it would go through the same as before, unless they wanted to make changes to it. But it's already on the site plan, has already been approved, so I don't see why it wouldn't be approved again.
All right, and then am I correct in my memory and reading this and understanding this would be the first extension, assuming we grant it as an extension for this project? This is not, we've not had many extensions as we have with other properties. This would be off of the initial approval. This would be the first requested extension.
That's correct.
All right, Mr. Chair, I recognize what Commissioner Oliver is saying, what Commissioner Provenzano is saying, and I agree to some extent that to me, their reasoning seems maybe a little bit stretched. I think everybody who is having a problem right now can say, hey, it's the pandemic and we couldn't get things done. And obviously there can be an element of truth to that and an element of convenient reasoning, and I get that. But I will say that with this particular application, we've seen subdivisions that came in for 10 or 15 extensions. And while I don't like the idea of granting something that's out of an extension, I mean, we haven't shut our township hall down for a month and a half in the time I've been paying attention, so I feel like it is a little bit unusual. And their original approval did expire right around when we were shutting it down. So I don't know that I particularly like the circumstances. I think maybe there could have been more effort put forth by the petitioner. But considering this is the first extension, considering that I don't think anything different would happen if we put them through this again, I would be supportive of doing a retroactive extension to the March 13th date to March 13th of 2021, and then treat it as a regular extension from that point. I think it makes sense what Mr. Assorti is saying. There's been enough differences this year, you know. You can't say with an extension, if it was required on October the 10th, it would be the same as March 13th when we were closed down during that portion. So I feel confident that this wouldn't be a significant precedent setter. So just throwing my thoughts out there, I'd be in support, and as soon as we have a chance, I'd be willing to make a motion to do a retroactive extension from a year from the original point of expiration. And those were my comments and questions. Thank you for giving me the chance.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Tuckfield, are you making a motion then?
If you are ready for motions, I didn't know if discussion was done.
Well, let me find out. Is there anyone else that has anything else they'd like to ask the petitioner or Mr. Box?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Member Tuckfield. I think that if we approve the extension, if we went back to the March 13th date, I'd be comfortable with that. But extending it for another year, like Member Provenzano stated, that'd be 18 months, and I don't think that'd be the right thing to do. So if Member Tuckfield is going to make a motion, I think I'm done with my discussion on the topic.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there was a statement that there needed to be some written documentation for the reason. And I guess my question would be, does that documentation count if it's just in a motion? Doesn't it have to be reflected in the submission for extension? And does in fact we have to have that backup?
Well, this is Thomas Sorty. My suggestion is that if you are going to do it retroactively, and because the ordinance requires you to do it within the 1 year of the expiration of the site plan, then again, given what's going on in the state of Michigan this year, I would think that it would be appropriate that you do it retroactively. But to support that, I think you need a finding, and that can be as part of the motion, as long as it's part of the minutes, that there's a finding that, the current situation has caused the delay, that would make it sufficient to go back, make it appropriate to go back retroactively. I think that would work. You wouldn't need something specifically from them in writing.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Tuckfield. One thing I would note is in the request, they do specifically say they're requesting extension due to delays that happened during COVID-19.
I think that would work. Mr. Assorti, does that make sense?
Yeah, again, it's not so much what's in the submission, it's the planning commission would need to make a finding that the conditions are such, and they presented enough evidence to suggest that it would be appropriate to retroactively approve it. Because again, our ordinance indicates that it's supposed to be done within the year. We can certainly deviate from that, but I would think that the planning commission would want to keep a record of why they did deviate from the ordinance.
Okay. And
So the planning commission is supposed to rule in favor of the ordinance though, correct?
Yeah, but I think, this is Mr. Box. I think what he's trying to say is that if you choose to grant an extension retroactively or otherwise, to avoid setting any type of precedence, put in the motion that the reasoning for accepting this or approving this extension is related to the current situation with the pandemic.
However, we were open a month and a half after the March closing, and we had no communication from the petitioner at that time. And if he was having troubles and working with another agency, all he had to do is say, hey, I just need an extension of time, and I'm dealing with these guys over here, and it still could have been done in April or May. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other petitioners have anything they want to share? Okay, we have a motion anywhere.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion on this item. I would make a motion to grant an extension of time for 1 year, retroactive to March 13, 2020, for the permanent parcel 0828376023. This would be based upon a finding that due to the time of when their extension would have been required, and due to the time that our township was closed based on a pandemic, and due to the disruption in the business community that time closed and building shut down instituted, that this extension is appropriate despite the fact that it falls outside of our typical norms.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Tuckfield.
I'll support it, Member Shudo.
Supported by Member Shudo. Mr. Bentley, call the roll.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Shuto,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
No, and I'd like to place on the record my dissent. I have not heard that because of the pandemic, he could not come to us and ask for an I was always told that as a member of the planning commission, if it meets the ordinance, then we approve it. In the event that it doesn't, we do not approve it. And I don't see that anything's been placed on the record that shows that it could not have been brought to us because we were only shut down for a month. So I say no.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, no. And Mr. Hardy,
No.
we have 3 nays. We have 3 ayes.
I'm not sure what we do now. Mr. Box, do you have any
Mike,
suggestions?
I think that's a question for Mr. Assorti.
Yeah,
It's 3-3. The motion doesn't pass. You need a majority vote of members to pass a motion. So at this point, you can move on or call for additional motions.
is there anyone that would like to make a different motion? Okay. Then the extension of time for the preliminary plan for Rockwood Park site condominiums does not pass.
Excuse me, I had my hand raised.
Go ahead, sir.
So I mean, we're just gonna go resubmit the same thing and just, it just seems like a lot of wasted time. I understand we were held up by the state for whatever reasons. It did lapse during the shutdown. I did have some family issues with COVID. It doesn't make an excuse for us not to communicate with you guys. We did, I actually, I don't know if it was earlier, we did try calling. But officially it was in August where I came in, but I just don't see if that's, the reason you're gonna approve the same darn thing. It seems like we're just going in circles here. And like you just said, you approved some subs 15 times, and this is our first extension. So that's all I'm trying to say. And I think I live in a township. I think it's a waste of taxpayer money for us to go back and forth with this. But if that's what you guys like to do, what can I say?
And Giovanni Morrow here with Morrow Engineering speaking. Just from an engineering standpoint, we are working diligently with the state. We have been. We went through all the necessary requirements with, I say the DEQ, that's the Department of Environmental Quality, but now it's the EGLE. I apologize for not clarifying that earlier. Yeah, that's all been worked out. We had some issues with them, just with some of the wetlands and then going to the banks for purchasing the credits. And that's a big portion of the project that we were working on. And, again, we're just going through with, now we want to go to the city level with the engineering. We've been working with the Macomb County Public Works for drain permits. There's already a drain tap that's for the existing pond that's on the site. We're changing that. We've been in discussions with Daryl Gafshis with Macomb County Public Works and Candace Miller's office. So there, and then with the pandemic, there's been a lot of discussions, but then it's been, hard to get communication, going. Yeah, again, we apologize for, no communication until August on the Planning Commission level for the extension. But yeah, we just, our engineering drawings are up to par with the EGLE. We have our draft permit. We're getting ready to get a permit, and we want to submit to the engineering department, within your township. So we can continue with the review, continue with getting this project moving forward.
Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing. However,
if you don't mind, if we could just reconsider a vote, so this way we can, keep the project going from an engineering perspective.
Okay, I will ask the petitioners one more time if they have a motion. If not, then the motion to extend time for preliminary plan Rockwood Park site condominiums does not pass. Commissioners, is there anyone that would like to make a second motion? Okay, at this point, the extension of time for preliminary plan Rockwood Park site condominiums does not pass. Let's move on to the next item. And that is the PUD concept for Fremont Development. Permanent parcel number 0835100004, located on the southeast corner of 21 Mile Road and Cart Road. Section 35 MJC Land Investments LLC petitioner. Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This PUD includes a mixture of residential units and commercial units, roughly 9 acres of residential, which includes 21 buildings and a total of 41 units, and about 7 acres of commercial consisting of a gas station, a bank, a car wash, and 2 drive-through facilities. The overall site is currently zone C3. As you mentioned, Mr. Hardy, it is in section 35, located south of 21 Mile, east of Card Road. As you'll see in the packets that you guys received, the departmental reviews have given the petitioner a number of items to address. This is a concept plan, so we're at this point, we're looking for high-level input from the commissioners this evening. We're not looking to get too deep into the weeds on some of the more intricate details, just some high-level comments so they can shape this development through the process, and they'll be back in front of you in the future. Overall, we believe that this development is a good fit with the surrounding development. They provide additional residential which would be a nice buffer between the existing residential with the commercial. It's similar to almost a mirror image of what is across Card Road from the existing location.
Okay, there's a petitioner in the audience.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mario Izzi with MJC Companies.
Please state your name and your address also, please, sir.
Yes, sir. 46600 Romeo Plank, Suite 5, Macomb Township.
Okay, what would you like to add, sir?
First of all, we appreciate the opportunity to present this project. We're very excited about the project. We agree with Mr. Box. Rather than 19 acres of C3, we'd like to do a transitional residential use to the existing single family, which is to the south and to the east of this parcel. We don't feel that there's much of a market right now for the traditional big box, 100,000 square foot type commercial use. We're proposing to break up the commercial into 3 or 4 potential smaller pads. That's not to say that in the future, if we get the appropriate users, we may try to put those together and do some sort of an inline store with a few smaller for lease or for rent stores within an inline commercial pad. But for right now, we feel very, very comfortable with breaking up the square footage. The trend right now, drive-throughs, curbside pickup. We generally, in most of our commercial portfolio, we deal with only national and regional tenants. Despite the COVID shutdown, for the most part, our tenants are very healthy, and that's why we choose to do business mostly with the regional and the national bigger players. But that's not to say that we wouldn't entertain a smaller mom and pop type business if the business plan was correct or appropriate for this site. So we appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to working with you. We have other interests in the community, and we look forward to going forward. So we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Box, did the concerns from the planning department get shared with the petitioner?
Yes, they have received our review letters.
Okay, and because this is a concept plan, there is no action going to be taken tonight. Is that correct? Until they have their preliminary plan?
That's correct. This
Okay.
is, as I mentioned, more of a high level review, providing input so they can shape this development through the process. It'll come back in front of this planning commission.
Correct. So this is the very, very first step of many steps.
That's correct.
Okay. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to our commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Bentley.
Mr. Bentley, go ahead.
A few preliminary questions from the assessor's office. There was, as he indicates, no indication of ownership by the developer, and I think that's a requirement of the application that the owner has to apply. I wondered if there had been any more development on that. And that question would be to Mr. Bach or to the petitioner.
Yeah, this is Mr. Box. That has not been resolved at this time, but it's something that we've worked through in the past.
All right. My next comments are primarily due to the layout and just for consideration for further development. It's basically regarding the site plan itself, as the residences I could barely read for the most part. But as it relates to the site plan and off of 21 Mile Road, the access onto 21 Mile Road, I don't know if there's a requirement, but certainly would be a recommendation that there be deceleration lanes associated with your drives, both on Card Road as well as 21 Mile Road. Again, I'm not sure if it's required. My next comment would be as it relates to the car wash and whether or not there would be vacuum stations there. It looks like there's some parking, but that's about it. It's just a once through and you're out of there. So I think with vacuum stations and such that seem to be going up all over, that might create a little bit of congestion with the room that has been allocated. And then there's 2 points where there might be circulation issues, which should be worked out. And that is for the 2 remaining buildings at the north end of the circular drive, where there's two-way traffic running into one-way traffic. And so I think there might need to be some work done there. And one last comment, and that's related to the border between the gas station parking, or I should say, not the gas station, the bank and the retention pond. And I'm not sure if what's there is sufficient for a screen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bentley. Any other commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Tuckfield,
Go ahead, Mr. Tuckfield.
and I've switched mics again, so let me know if I'm coming through okay or if there's any issues in that regard.
It is a little better.
Okay, hopefully I might jump to enough of them that it might work by the time the meeting's done. We'll see how it goes. So just overall concept wise, and I was changing my my microphone, so some of the opening portions of this I missed as I was trying to reconnect my audio. So I apologize if I bring up something that's specifically been brought up, but I do like the idea of not making this all commercial, buffering a little bit more to the residential, to the east and to the south. I think that works out good. It also gives us a component of slightly higher density, maybe a different type of housing than we have elsewhere in the township. I think we've generally could use a little bit more of that balance, and we haven't always found the best place to put it. So I think these the duplexes there seem to make sense in the transition and help a need in the township, particularly in that area. So I like those. I agreed with Mr. Bentley's comments that there does seem, if I understood him right, that there does seem to be some traffic issues in front of buildings C and D. Hopefully those can be addressed. Perhaps there's room for another circulating drive to the south of them or something of that nature, but it seems that there might be some traffic issues there. I was curious the thought process of where the detention basins were. I like how the residential is pushed off of Card with the basins on the west side of the property. I wondered if there was anything that might be able to be balanced to do that on the north side of the property as well, to keep those first ones back a little bit from the road. Maybe rearranging stuff just might be something to think about in there. And then the last comment or question I would have would be with regards to open space. I believe Mr. Skirdo's review mentions open space. And primarily the only open space I see, I assume the detention basins do not count, circles the gas station, which doesn't necessarily seem like an ideal place for it with regards to the overall aesthetics and flow of the site. So I'm wondering if there is any thought to that, if that meets the 15% now, or if more is going to be added. And then tying with that, Mr. Skirdo's comments that trails should be provided through the open space, just how that would work. So that's more of a question. And then actually I had one more thing that I forgot, and that was For Mr. Skirdo, maybe this goes to our ordinance and it's not a place that I'm familiar with. Maybe it goes to the width of the road. But it looked like there was recommendations to not include sidewalks through the development. And I was hoping you could just speak to that on your thoughts about why that would be the case, if it's inherent to the road type or inherent to the housing type, or what your thoughts were there. And I think that was everything I had.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Are there any other commissioners with comments tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Hardy,
Mr. Oliver, yes, sir.
just again on that car wash, I am concerned about busy days when they start stacking up. If they're just gonna end up blocking that traffic because they're waiting to get their car wash, it does not appear that there's enough room to get 6, 8, 10, 12 cars in there. And that typically can happen on the right day after a snowstorm when the sun's out and all the cars are white from salt. People want to jump into a car wash real quick, and you could have 20 cars there, and I would be very concerned of traffic, how that's going to work. So that it sounds like some of the other commissioners are feeling the same way. So I think that's one thing that to the petitioner that you're going to really have to bring back to us to satisfy us when that day comes and we have 20 extra cars there. Are you going to be able to put them somewhere safely to let traffic still flow? And that's about all I got to say. I like the idea of putting the living units up against more living units. That works out good. The gas station looks fine. The credit union looks fine. So I'm not against this project at all. I'm just concerned about that car wash and probably the other buildings, what's going to go there. And that's all I had to say.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Oliver. Anyone else, commissioners? Mr. Box, do I need to open this to the public since it's just a concept plan or no?
Yes, you can open this to the public.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it to the public. Dan, do we have anybody that would like to speak on this item?
If there's anyone in the public who would like to speak, go ahead and virtually raise your hand or put something in the chat. If you're on the phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. I do not see anyone.
Okay. Let's give it just another moment because we are virtual and I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity.
It looks like a question has come through in the chat.
And it's from Ronald Papa. And it says, to Mr. Oliver's concern, traffic heading into the car washes is reduced if there are multiple lanes that merge into the entrance. So it's more of a comment than it is a question. Okay. And do you have anyone else, Dan?
At this moment, no.
Okay. Then I would like a motion to close the public hearing at 7:53. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Oliver.
Chair. Mr.
Supported
Chair.
by Mr. Provenzano.
No, hold on, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I lost my screen. I had my microphone off. I'm having technical difficulties. I just wanted to make a comment. I was trying to
Okay,
get
go
in before you went to the, what I wanted to say was, reading what tonight's paperwork, it indicated that the application is supposed to set forth in 10.24, I think it's 01B5 or 04B5. In the application, it's supposed to set forth the criteria, which this being a PUD is supposed to be a special land use. So the 8 criteria were not really addressed in the application. So that might be something they want to take a look at. And then also to, address the concerns, both of Mr. Tuckfield, Mr. Bentley, and those that were set forth by Mr. Bach. So I just think that, you know, when it comes back, I realize this is a first step of many steps, but they should probably take a look at that and pay attention to the special land use statute ordinance, excuse me. That's all I had to say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Mr.
I
Provenzano.
lost my screen.
It's quite all right. It's okay. So we now have a motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Oliver. Do we have a second?
So moved.
And
Mr.
that's by Mr. Bentley.
Yes.
And the motion is to close the public hearing at 7:52. Mr. Bentley, please call the roll.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
Yes. If I can get myself together.
Mr. Shudo,
I'm a mess over here.
Mr. Shudo.
Yes.
Thank you. All eyes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next item is the preliminary plan for Wolverine Country Club Estate number 2. Permanent parcel 0805-301-009, located on the east side of Romeo Plank, north of 25 Mile Road, Section 5, Lombardo Homes petitioner. Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wolverine Country Club Estates 2 is a residential community. It's a continuation of a set of previous developments located where the former Wolverine Golf Club once was. It's located in Section 5, north of 25 Mile East Romeo Plank. Much like the previous agenda item, this is a preliminary plan looking for some high-level comments from the Planning Commission, as some of the smaller items can be ironed out throughout the development process. The internal department reviews, which were provided to you in your packet, have some comments listed, but the consensus is for approval of the preliminary plan.
Okay. Is the petitioner in the audience?
Yes, we are.
Do you have anything? Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, I am Jennifer Thomas with Lombardo Homes, and our address is 13001 23 Mile Road, Suite 200, Shelby Township.
Ms. Thomas, do you have anything you'd like to add to Mr. Box?
I actually have a short presentation. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and pull it up for you.
Dan, are you good with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. First off, I wanted to thank you guys for allowing us the opportunity to present on our community this evening. I am Jennifer Thomas. I am the entitlements manager at Lombardo Homes, and also on the line with me this evening, we have Joe Klee, the director of land development. So as we discussed, we are talking about the Wolverine Country Club Estates Phase 2. On our short agenda tonight, we just have some introductions of our staff that would be working on this with you all, and then an overview of the project and our request of the Planning Commission. If you could just hold questions until the end, that would be great. Introductions, obviously I just introduced myself. I'm Jennifer Thomas. We have Joe Klee on the line, and then Lyle Wynn is not on the line with us, but he's the development compliance manager. So all of our contact information is there. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us by phone or by email. And getting into the project. So this is the phase 2 of the Wolverine Country Club, and it's 107 acres. It is currently split by the Consumer Power right-of-way, which separates the parcel. You can see there with the crosshatch. It is a R1 zoning. So the master plan density is 3 units per acre. We're currently providing 2.62 units per acre. And as I mentioned, this is a phase 2. So, you know, if this is approved, we would be reducing the traffic that we have in our phase 1 construction traffic, because once we commence on the phase 2 section, We will be launching new product line, a new model off of Romeo Plank, which would definitely decrease the traffic over there. And then we would also be proposing a pedestrian bridge over the middle branch of the Clinton River along Romeo Plank Road. Getting into some of the specifics, we are proposing 281 lots over 9 phases. And as you can see, we have, because I just mentioned we were going to reduce construction traffic for phase 1 residents. We have a connection point A, connection point B, and connection point C that were originally designed with our phase 1 for an intent to move into a phase 2. Moving on to the next slide, it shows those connection points in detail. So here you can see the existing roadways and then our proposed roads and how they tie into those connection areas. And as mentioned, we have received preliminary comments from the engineering review staff. We have addressed all of those comments with the exception of lots 4 and 5, which is not something that we would be asking of tonight, but we just wanted to let you know that in the future, we would be going in for a variance on those lots due to a width depth ratio. The ordinance states 3 to 1. We're calculating out at about 3.9 to 1 right now. And the reason that we would be going in for the variance on these is just because of the fact that if we followed the 3 to 1, we would be creating a landlocked, unusable parcel due to the fact that the parcel to the east of to the west of lot number 4 is an out parcel owned by 2 separate individual residences off of Romeo Plank. And then to the south, we have that consumer's right of way that we don't have access through. So it would leave unusable open space with no access to it. And our request of the Planning Commission this evening is to grant us preliminary site plan approval for our Wolverine Country Club Estates Phase 2. And that's all I have. I'm gonna stop sharing and go into comment.
Artie, I don't know if you're.
I know I'm on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you have anything you would like to ask or share about this project?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Tuckfield. I did have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Tuckfield.
2 actually. First one to the petitioner. There is a stub street on the north side of Phase 4, Bayside Drive. Obviously, we have the consumer's easement there, but the stub was provided obviously in anticipation of that being connected. Do you have any expectation of connecting that? Have you talked with consumers? What would your plan be with that?
Okay, so we are showing, obviously on our parcel where we show the connection from us, we do know that there is that stub street there, and we are not opposed to connecting it or not connecting it. Whichever way is the preferred option is what we would go with, depending on what is recommended.
Very good. And Mr. Box, I'm not sure when the appropriate time for that would be. My preference would just be to see it connected. Stub streets that run into blank ends with another stub street several hundred feet away seems like it should be connected, but I'm not sure when the proper time for that would be, other than I think that'll be a good thing. Second question I would have would be with regards to phasing. I know obviously there's a balance in phasing between the sales aspect and the wear aspect, but we see a lot of issues with heavy construction traffic in the rear of neighborhoods, and then going through the middle of neighborhoods, and just generally it can be difficult. Do you have any preliminary construction entrance plans or thoughts on how you're going to reduce the wear on the residential streets while you're in construction?
At this time, from a preliminary construction entrance, we do not have that dialed out here. Our thoughts right now are to use Romeo Plank. And you'll see on the, and I can pull up that phase exhibit if that would help, but we are looking to use Romeo Plank and then reduce the traffic coming through phase 1 and go from there.
Okay. It would be something I'd be interested. Obviously, we have various size subs coming in. This one is rather large. It's rather deep. So it's a concern that we've had and we've seen grow as the township's grown. The nature of construction traffic damaging roads, and just trying to mitigate that as much as possible, because obviously that becomes a township or county government responsibility at the point that you guys have given those over. The only other comment or question I would have or note is that 4 and 5 were noted as potentially needing a variance or needing some difference from the 3-to-1 ratio. And I just wanted to verify that 6, 7, and 18 looked like they might be close as well. Just to make sure you guys check those before you come in. Obviously, it makes sense to do all of them at the same time if they were all an issue. Along with 10 and 17, they all seem to be somewhere in that general look of being around 3-to-1. So just if you could make sure you check all of those. I know the comments from maybe 4 and 5, but the other ones look like they might be as well. And that was all the comments I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Anyone
Yes,
else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Bentley.
Go ahead, Mr. Bentley.
Just as a follow-up to Mr. Tuckfield's question regarding the Jones Drive connecting to Skyline Drive, has there been any discussions, preliminary discussions, albeit with the Consumers Power related to crossing their easement? I notice in phase 2 that you're crossing their easement, and I wondered if there had been any discussions as well with the subdivision to the north and with the Consumers Power.
As it relates for the subdivision to the north with the existing street that Mr. Tuckfield also brought up, we have not had that conversation yet. Obviously, this is preliminary, so we are showing that we do have the potential to be able to connect there if that's what the township would like to see. And as far as the conversations with consumers, those are, I mean, we're ready to go in and have those conversations with those right now.
All right. And then as a follow-up to construction access, is there any preclusion to using the existing subdivision drives for construction traffic?
Utilizing the existing entrances that we have off of the Wolverine Country Club phase 1.
Yes.
Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
So no, once we commence and start on the phase 2, all of the construction traffic would be pushed through our phase 2 or a Romeo Plank Road entrance, and then any of the remaining lots located within phase 1 would be accessed from this phase 2 part project. And so that way then any of the, all those residents that are currently living in there would see reduced construction traffic, and it might only be adjacent to where a remaining lot is being developed.
I see. Thank you. One more question, and that's in regards to, actually, it might be 2 parts to that question. There is at the south west area of this site an existing wetland mitigation area, and I assume that with the diagram showing the 100-year floodplain well into some of the lots, in fact, probably covering 95% of some lots and at various degrees on others. Is there any plan, and I'm sure you'll have discussions with them, but are there any plans to have additional wetland mitigation or additional ways to control that 100-year floodplain from the access onto many of the lots?
At this time, since we are still in the preliminary stages, the detailed engineering of that, once we get into that in the next phases of this, we'll have an answer to that. We will definitely be looking into those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're planning on using some of these sites for homes, it's in our interest that at least that be taken care of as part of your planning, or you wouldn't put more lots there. So that would be an area of concern that you would need to address when this comes in next.
Absolutely.
And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Oliver. Yes, sir.
one quick question to Jennifer. If things progress, when would you anticipate a start time?
We are anticipating a start of construction in 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Are there any other questions from our petitioner or from our commissioners? Anyone? Mr. Provenzano, I see your name coming up. Did you have a question?
No, I did not. I don't know. I don't know what I pushed.
Okay, no, it's okay. I just thought you might have a question. All right, at this time, I'd like to open it to the public. Dan, is there anyone that would like to comment on this item?
If there's anyone in the public who'd like to make a comment, again, go ahead and virtually raise your hand. If you're calling in, dial *9 or put something in the chat. It
Okay.
looks, yeah, there you go.
I got one comment from Mr. Joe DeBay. Concerns over new entrance on Romeo Plank due to existing traffic congestion. All right, Dan, do you have anyone else that would like to speak? Thank you, Mr. DeBay.
As of right now, nobody has their hand raised.
Okay. Would anybody like to address Mr. DeBay's concern over the entrance on Romeo Plank and the existing traffic congestion, Mr. Box or the petitioner?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Say that again.
He's got, Mr. DeBay's got concerns over new entrance on Romeo Plank due to existing traffic congestion. Concerns over new entrance on Romeo Plank due to existing traffic congestion.
Well, you know, traffic is controlled by the county road department, and they would have to work with the developer to make sure that a new entrance onto their roadway is allowed. So any traffic congestion concerns would be something that the county would deal with, not the township.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Daniel, if there's no one else, we're going to go ahead and do I have a motion to close the public hearing at 8:13?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Tuckfield.
Thank you, Mr. Tuckfield.
Member
have a
Shudo will second it.
And thank you, Mr. Shudo. Mr. Bentley, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
all ayes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Box, we now have to do a motion to pass the preliminary plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to make the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Oliver, thank you.
I would move, we would accept the preliminary plan of Wolverine Country Club Estates 2, parcel number 08-05-301-009, located east side of Romeo Plank, north of 25 Mile Road in section 5.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Mr. Bentley, please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes, and Mr. Hardy.
Yes,
All ayes.
motion passes. Next item of business is old business. Mr. Box, do we have any old business that we need to talk about tonight?
We do not.
Okay, then we'll move on to public comments on non-agenda items. Dan, do we have anybody that would like to speak?
This is Jennifer. I'm sorry, Jennifer from Lumber. I just wanted to say thank you very much for the time this evening and the approval.
Thank you, Jennifer. Would you do us a favor and send your PowerPoint presentation to Mr. Box?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
All right. Daniel, do we have anybody that would like to speak on non-agenda items?
As of right now, no, but as a reminder, if you'd like to speak, either put something in the chat, virtually raise your hand, or dial *9.
All right, seeing nothing in the chat and Dan doesn't have anybody online, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments. And I'm going to move to the next item, which is commissioners' comments. And I'm going to start, actually. One of our firefighters, retired firefighters, recently passed away. Michael O'Lear was one of the best people I have ever had an opportunity to work with. I was on the Macomb Township Fire Department for 17 years. And I just want to pay my respects to his family. I know he was very well loved, not only by his family, but by friends and fellow firefighters that looked up to him as a role model and a mentor. And he will truly, truly be missed. He'll be laid out, I believe, on Thursday at St. Isidore's Church. So Miss O'Lear and sons, you have my sympathy and my prayers. And that's all I have. Anybody, other commissioners?
Well, I'll second that. I was wondering, Mr. Oliver, did your friend make the 140 miles, the firefighter?
Yes,
Or is
he did make it, Mr. Provenzano, and he's probably pretty tired, but and he raised quite a bit of money for his cause, which was cancer for firefighters. Great cause.
Good.
It all worked out. But Mr. Hardy, you're right. I knew Michael for many years when I was trustee and back in the 80s and 90s, and quite a guy. I made the comment last night at the BOT meeting that he was the first firefighter that brought in exercise equipment. He requested to the board that we bring equipment in for the firefighters, and he was pretty passionate about being healthy. And the funny thing is, when he retired, he helped his son in landscaping. So our paths crossed even then, and we had a few laughs about a lot of things. Yeah, I'll miss him. I'll miss his laugh. Pretty good guy.
Thank you, Mr.
I had
Oliver.
one other thing I wanted to bring up.
Go ahead,
And
Mr.
somebody help me with this. anybody help me with this, legal, any commissioner. Earlier, we did the PUD, and, you know, Mr. Skirtle spends a lot of time writing these things up. And I just want to say that, you know, according to the statute, the application that's submitted, we have to review that as commissioners. And it says it right there in the statute. We got to review this. And one of the things that we got to look at is that which is submitted. And while Mr. I believe said approve, it indicates the project narrative that was submitted doesn't specifically address the standards, which is 1 through 8, which is special use. If you look at the application, it's really weak when it comes to addressing that. And, you know, the ordinance is the ordinance. And, you know, like I said earlier with the extension, I was taught that if it meets the ordinance, you approve it. If it doesn't, you don't. Now, the reason I said yes was because I know that this is the preliminary, and there's a lot of stages to go. But I'm hoping that when I told them that I'm looking to see next time that they address these things that are in the statute, it says right in the ordinance, you have to address the 8 concerns. If we're just going to rubber stamp these things and not hold these people to the ordinance, you know, I think I'm going to have a problem with it. So I just hope that they heed that, and, you know, they address what Bentley and Aaron said, those concerns of Mr. Skirtle, but that they follow the ordinance. And when they submit, I mean, is another application going to be submitted for the next phase? Because I'm looking for them to address the special use standards, because that's what it says that they have to do. But moreover, the statute 10.2401B5 and D2 say we have to review that application, and it has to do that. Now, if I'm wrong, I want to be told I'm wrong. And if if I'm not wrong, then I just think as commissioners, we need to look at that, and we need to do. I know that when we hear the projects, they sound good, and we feel, you know, they're going to be beneficial, and that's great. But before we get to the substance of that, there's a procedure that the ordinance lays out for us commissioners, and we have to follow that. And I don't, you know, when the hell was the last time that I ever denied an extension of time? Okay, never. And we don't do that, you know, normally. And the guy's position was, come on, man, just, you know, let me get through this because, you know, we're just going to resubmit. I understand what he's saying. But if I'm going to hold this position, you know, I have to look at these statutes. And when I was reading the nice work that Mr. Skirtle, he laid it all out for us. And I just think that was a real weak application as it relates to the approval for the PUD. It's a special land use, it's 8 standards. It says in the application. Now, it also says that in the plan, in the design plan, and, you know, things that are coming up forward, you know, it's got to be specific. It didn't say that. It had to be specific that I saw in the statute for tonight. But I think going forward, we need to look at these applications and make sure that procedurally they're sound, because they have to have standing to move forward. And if they don't do what they're supposed to and they lack the standing, I don't know how, you know, we vote yes, but I did because I thought that, you know, it's early on and he can correct these things. I mentioned it to him. So I hope that they do whatever it is they got to do, but I'm going to follow that statute, that ordinance. That's all I got. So if I'm wrong, somebody tell me where, you know, I'm missing the boat, because if there's something I'm missing or I'm overreading this, you know, I'm fine being corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Is there any other comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Shudo. I'd like to thank Mr. Bach and the Planning Department for their master plan workshop last Wednesday. I listened to it. It was very informative. Mr. Van Tiffelen and Mr. Bach explained everything that needed to be explained. And I think this is a great tool for our residents to find out about the master plan. I hope once people realize that this is going to be a weekly thing, bi-weekly or whatever it is, that they join the meeting, listen, and learn. So Josh, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Van Tiffelen, and Planning and Engineering Department for a job well done. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shudo. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Tuckfield.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple comments. First one, I want to echo Mr. Shudo. Mr. Box, I really appreciated the workshop. Hopefully there'll be more participation from the public in the future. I thought it was a little bit sad, not in a criticizing way, but I know that roads are very much a concern of township residents, and I wish we had more people joining in and talking about it. So to me, it was an admonition that I need to make sure for future conversations that I work that much harder on making sure people are aware of it and try to make sure they're involved. But as far as the program went, really appreciate it. Very helpful. Mr. Van Tiffelen was great as normal. Josh, it was really good to see you kind of in that situation. It's a little bit different of a situation than we've kind of seen you in. And I say seen sort of in a loose manner, because with the joy of this year, I know none of us have seen you very many times. No, I really appreciated it. Just stepping back for a second to the extension of time that we looked at earlier. I just wanted to kind of echo sort of some of the things that Mr. Provenzano said, and also I just want to throw it out there. I really appreciate that outlook and that holding us to the line that we should be holding to, Nunzio. It's definitely sometimes easy to not think about the rules we have to go by and not by the ordinance, and I really appreciate you making sure we hold to it. I did think a little bit differently in that case maybe than you did, but I certainly appreciate that line that you hold us to. And then just briefly as a secondary, I certainly don't know the best method of how the application should go with the special land use. I will say that the way I've typically treated it is if they address not in a specific format, i.e. this is how we're addressing item 1 of the requirements in item 2, but if the things that they put forth in their plan address those things positively, then I assume that it's addressed, and I don't necessarily hold it against them if they don't specifically address it. And conversely, whether they specifically state that it responds to those items or not, if they don't meet those standards, then to me that's a reason to not vote for it. So I certainly appreciate wanting to hold us to it, and you, as long as I've been on the commission, you've really held that line of the, if it meets the ordinance, we must approve it. And that's something that not everybody thinks about. And I think it certainly is a good admonition here. So I'm not sure that I really am trying to answer anything other than to say it's a good thing to think about. I do think about it. I think we should still think about it, and I appreciate you bringing it up. And that was all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Oliver, our Macomb Township Board of Trustee liaison.
Yes,
Have anything to share tonight?
Yes, Mr. Hardy, thank you. A couple things. The township brought on a couple new employees. They brought on a election coordinator. They also brought on a building inspector. And for our planning department, we are going to get a review analyst or position. And that person will be able to check prints and check plans and hopefully help Josh and the planning department out a lot. And that's kind of it.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Oliver?
That's it. That's it.
Okay, well done. Thank you, sir. ZBA liaison, Mr. Tuckfield.
Mr. Hardy, I have nothing for ZBA, but if I might be granted another 30 seconds, I had one other thing that I forgot to mention earlier.
Granted. Go ahead, sir.
Very good. Just very briefly, this is the last meeting before the November election. We have two full-time elected officials who have been with the township for a long time, who either did not run in the August primary or who were not successful in the August primary. And obviously, it's politics. There's good things and bad things about everybody in everybody's eyes. But I just wanted to put a shout out there that, I've worked with Janet Dunn, the supervisor. I've worked with Karen Goodhue, the treasurer. And I really appreciate their dedication to township. Everybody could disagree with everybody. The last 4 years have been interesting. I know sometimes there's been some political ups and downs. But I know that those two individuals genuinely care for the township, and I've seen them working hard for it. And I just wanted to put out there, I really appreciate their efforts, and I wish them well going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Planning Department items, Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I thank you to Mr. Shudo and Mr. Tuckfield and others who have applauded us for our efforts on a master plan. There's a lot more still to do. I agree that participation was lacking last week. I hope tomorrow that the numbers are higher. We've worked on a few things this week to possibly increase that participation tomorrow and maybe even more for the following week and into the future. The master plan is moving forward. All the information can be found at cultivatemacomb.com. That is our project website for it. I know those left on the call, I'm kind of preaching to the choir right now, but I know this meeting is recorded. So for those who listen later on, please go to cultivatemacomb.com and check it out. Number of public forums taking place again last week. The roads and utilities discussion, it was recorded. That can be viewed on the website. Tomorrow we're going to discuss recreation trails and mobility. It will also be recorded and posted to the website. Next week we're going to discuss land use and demographics. Again, that will be recorded and posted to the website. Information for how to dial into tomorrow night and the following week, also located on cultivatemacomb.com. We have a survey and a photo contest live on cultivatemacomb.com as well. Please participate in that. We have some nice gift cards for the winners of the photo contest. Everybody, please pass this on to your friends and your neighbors. We want as much participation as possible. And this is your township as residents. We want you to be as involved as much as possible, and have your voice heard in terms of the way that this township grows and develops into the future. One other thing I did want to touch on is with regards to next year. We have it will be going to the board for approval, but tentatively this planning commission meets on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Next calendar year, that will remain the same. The only two deviations would be one in November would be on November 1st, which I believe is actually a Monday, to avoid an election date, and December 20th due to I believe the board meeting being moved back from Wednesday to a Tuesday, so we're moving from the Tuesday back to a Monday. But otherwise, the other, I guess, 22 times that we meet per year are the first and third Tuesday of every month per usual. And that's all I got for you tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Box. Just a quick question. Does the Planning Commission have the homeowners association's information? I mean, we have a lot of them. Is there a database with all the associations in the township or no?
Not a database per se. I mean, we have a list of where these developments exist, but we do not have any type of database as far as who is the chair of a certain homeowners association and what their contact information would be.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Provenzano.
Can I ask Mr. Box something? So may I?
You may, sure.
Okay, so and it also will answer the query that Richard had before we started about the survey, because he said he read it in the minute and he wasn't sure. So Richard, on September 11th, Josh sent us all a link, and he says, to a very rough draft of the survey that will be used for the master plan. Please
Yes.
take some time to review it. And it was a little, so Josh, I guess then to my question to you is, so this is a very rough draft. Is there another one that's coming out that you changed this around a little?
Yes, the one that is live now on our project website, again, cultivatemacomb.com. That survey is similar to the one you looked at previously. Obviously, we've incorporated your comments into it, as well as other comments from staff internal to the township that went through kind of that rough draft version. So yes, the finalized survey is out there and is on our project website. So if you guys have not gone there and participated in that survey, please do.
Okay, I just want to say again, it was the September 11th email you sent to all of us. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, gentlemen. I'm sorry. Motion to adjourn.
Member Shudo, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Shudo. Motion by Mr. Shudo,
Or by Tuckfield.
seconded by Mr. Tuckfield. Mr. Bentley, call the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano.
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
That's it.
meeting is adjourned at 8:36. Thank you, everyone. Everybody take care.